one of my favorite subjects. I don't talk about it all that much because I mean, what can you say about 1.3 trillion dollars in unpaid student loans? I mean, what really needs to be said about that? Um, but if you want to hear something about it, I'll gladly tell you something. This is a long time ago when I started doing these videos, like very, first, I don't know how many. I don't even know if I was using the Realist News title, front on all my, titles or whatever. But I think I called my, because I was just reporting the doom and gloom. Hey, this is what's happening. And someone may have said it to me and it kind of stuck. So I just used to refer to myself as Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom. So I'm reading this. This is something I've never been to this site before, but I read it, a link somewhere else, followed it. It's like, oh, this would be a good video right here. It's a blog called Confessions of a College Professor. Rants and raves about the mess of higher education in the United States. He's got a new post here called Student Loans Draining Social Security by Professor Doom. Professor Doom, do you remember Dr. Doom? I think we may have studied together some years ago. I read this thing. I said, man, this actually makes a lot of sense. It's sad. It's so sad. And even though they're forcing these people, as you're going to hear, elderly people even, who still owe money on their student loan debt, they still have, they haven't paid off or whatever, and they're like in their 80s. Oh, so you get Social Security? Yeah, we're gonna have to dock that. We're gonna have to dock it. And keep in mind, the other day, I was on Godlike Productions website, and somebody posted there. They said something like, "This is how much I've paid on my student loan debt, and look at my statement." Something. So I'm looking at they've scanned their documents, and I'm looking at them. And it's showing, principal, interest, remaining balance. And I'm seeing like, $200 paid, almost half of that's interest. $85 paid, $40 interest. What? You made an $85 payment, $45 was interest, and, 40 or whatever, it was 45 payment and 40 was interest or something like that. So not only do you have to pay that back, but, you ain't been paying on it for all these years. Oh, yeah, interest rate goes up now because you've gotten delinquent. You've signed the fine terms. And this person makes a very good point of how it's so easy to convince these young kids to sign your life away. You're going to make so much money. You're going to get this degree. Oh, yeah, I don't want to work at McDonald's. Oh, yeah, just sign right here. I can't emphasize strongly enough how important it is to end the student loan scam. I know I've been harping on how bad it is lately, but it bears repetition. Student loans turn our kids into prostitutes. Student loans drive our kids out of the country. It actually does, because they have to pay that money back. And some girls realize, this is how I'm going to handle that, which is a shame. And now student loans are destroying the Social Security safety net. I'm not a fan of the Social Security system. The whole idea of give your money to government and trust it to give it back to you in 40 years strikes me as pure idiocy. But Social Security, a horrible government-created problem, was created to help fix the horrible government-created problem of Keynesian fiat currency. The latter makes it possible for people to save because their wealth is constantly being sucked away from them by the Fed's printing scheme. Anyway, Social Security is supposed to help by giving money to our citizens when they are too old, too infirm, to even work as a greeter at Walmart or to pour coffee cups or cups of coffee. The trouble is, student debt is insanely high now, and all too often that debt was for coursework that couldn't even theoretically result in a job that could pay well enough to pay back the debt. This scheme has been going on for decades now, And now we have elderly citizens finally collecting their Social Security who still haven't paid off that impossible to pay off student loan. Well, they almost get to collect that Social Security. When your Social Security check disappears because of an old student loan, this is becoming ever more common now. Elderly citizens finally old enough to be handed some of their own money back via Social Security and not getting it because they were suckered into student loans. Naomi Davis hasn't been able to talk on the phone since 2004. The 80-year-old Brooklynite was diagnosed with Alzheimer's more than 10 years ago and can no longer read. Despite all of this, the government still expects her to pay back a federal student loan she took out in the 1980s. You owe us that money. You took that. No one forced you to sign that pen. Take that pen and sign your name. It's your debt. You owe it. Well, wait a minute. Why do they make bankruptcy laws? Oh, not for student loan debt. Death and taxes? No. Death, taxes, and student loans. That will be with you the rest of your life. It's so funny and sad in a way. One of my first essays compared higher education administrators to scumbags who ripped off the elderly. That is fantastic. One of his first essays, I say he, could be a she, but I think it's a he. One of my first essays compared higher education administrators to scumbags who ripped off the elderly. If I targeted elderly patients with dementia to the point that they had the cognitive skills of an 8-year-old and manipulated them into signing contracts, turning over their life savings to me, I'd be considered a scumbag. If I targeted 8-year-old kids and got them to sign contracts so that every penny they saved in their lives went straight to me, I'd be considered a fool. If someone comes to my university and I document they have the cognitive skills of an 8-year-old, then make them check a box so that I can make more money and the student will never save a penny in his life, I am a successful university administrator. It's sad that the hyperbole of a few years ago is now a simple statement of fact. To take money out of the pockets of senile elderly, how can someone do this when the leaders running higher education do this every day now? Not well, but the leaders running higher education do this every day now. Let's see if I can say something else outrageous that nevertheless becomes truth. Hey, federal government, instead of abusing the elderly, why don't you just claw back the money that was illicitly transferred to the rulers of higher education? A ridiculous, outrageous, draconian idea, but so many of our schools are money laundering schemes, in-debt the students through bogus coursework, take the money and stuff it into the pockets of admin because of their, quote, leadership. Screw that. This money was taken illicitly, and like any other fraud, the criminals should not be able to just walk away with their ill-gotten gains. Enough hyperbole. Back to reality. While the previous story is just one person, such stories are becoming ever more common. Quote, between 2002 and 2013, the number of senior citizens losing out on a portion of their Social Security to pay back education debt soared 500%, from 6,000 to 36,000. Sure, 500% growth still just means 36,000 victims. But realize the student loan scam has been running for only a few decades. It really just started to become a problem, a major scam, in the last 30 years. It will get much, much worse than a measly 500% growth once those former students reach that magical age of 65. More than 3 million Americans ages 50 to 64 are in default on their student loans, putting them at risk of having their benefits garnished when they claim Social Security if they don't find a way to become current on their debt. Seriously, do the math. If a 50-year-old is defaulting, he's probably not going to be able to pay back that money, ever. 50 years old, plus 15 years, is the magic age of 65. So in 15 years, we'll go from 36,000 victims to 3 million victims. That's a 20,000% increase if these people don't die first. Yikes. Am I really the only one able to connect the dots here? Well, we'll be ridiculously lucky if the problem of vanishing Social Security checks sticks to only 500% growth. I again come back to claw back the money. Track down these scum who preyed on our kids so ferociously. Shut down the for-profits and claim their assets. I know most of the money has been spent and you can't get it all back that way, but this was pure, ruthless fraud. It's almost predatory that they are put in these situations, said Adam Minsky, a Boston-based attorney who specializes in student loan issues. Almost predatory? Everyone looks at what's been going on in higher education, comes to the conclusion that a great many of our student debtors were ripped off, and there's never any call to de-rip that money back from the people who took it. Yes, I know most of the folks who took the money work for the government, and asking government to police itself like this is basically suicide, so just take it as a fantasy idea here. It turns out the man may have actually signed Nicholson up for a loan, but she says it was without her knowledge. Nicholson started attending classes in September of that year, and when she returned from Christmas break, there was a padlock on the door of the school. Isn't that great? Students get signed up for loans without even knowing about it, and 30 years down the road, get hammered finding out they're in debt for many multiples of a loan they never knew they had. 40% of debtors weren't really told about the loans, so yeah, this problem will just get bigger. Maybe someone else can suggest clawing back the money from the crooks who stole it. ProfessorConfess.blogspot.com. Wow, I'm going to go ahead and link this as well. I mean, again, the proof is in the pudding. If you have $1.3 trillion, not just in student loan debt, it is outstanding. And as I mentioned the other day, our government has, we got $3.5 trillion in assets. What's a third of that? Student loans. You actually count the student loans of 1.3 trillion approximately as an asset in your $3.5 trillion number of United States assets. That's a big 10-4. I'm going to go upstairs and drop a stinking load in the toilet and call that an asset. I wonder if someone will trade me a stack of silver coins for that asset. It's an asset. It came out of my ass and I set it in the toilet. About the same as these student loan debt we got out here. Jesus. Take care.